Can I take your devices or do you need them?
I wanted to use something from the...
From here, do you want me to pull
I
it up?
can't.
You can, but it's better if I bring it to you when you need it.
Okay.
What it is.
Is it Google Vision? Then of the Chinese,
You sent that to me.
that link.
And your signal when? You'll tell me when you need it.
Okay, so I'm gonna try.
Right.
You can let me know if you can hear me low enough, because I forgot my shield.
One in the hall. Do you want me to get it for you?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, can you hear me clear enough, though?
Yeah, great.
It is?
Yeah. We also are transferring to digital, so it's different if they have a mask on over digital.
Okay, because it might be a little... I'm trying to hold it kind of loose so that I can breathe. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've studied this year as we're ending. I do need it, Rob. We started off with Buddhahood without meditation. So for those of you who feel like you can't meditate in the usual ways, this was the book. It was wonderful. And it pointed us to the fact that the meditation is some outward thing that we do, and when you're learning how to do something, you sort of cloister yourself so that you can devote full time and attention to it. But as one starts to get better and better at it, then there's not so much the necessity for cloister unless you cannot find your way into it uncloistered. So this was a great book to give people the courage and a pathway towards being able to fold inside without doing so much strict formal sitting. So if that's you, get this, Buddhahood without meditation. The second book was Mindfulness, Bliss, and Beyond. And it was in the Theravada training of both first mindfulness, and then it went on to concentration. And from concentration, it went on to meditative attainment, the signs, and then from on the pillow to off the pillow. Is okay? From on the pillow to off the pillow, so that we sit in meditation, we walk in meditation. Our whole life becomes a meditation. You know, if I could only get a signal when I was on the pillow, I wouldn't get that many signals. But it's just being open to the fabric of the universe, so that at any time one can tap in to the now moment. And this is where I've been trying to get to help us to go this whole year. Yes, there has to be training. Yes, there has to be learning and living the precepts. Yes, we have all of those things, but those things are not the thing, is what I'm saying. When it transfers from the book into one's heart, when it transfers from one's mind in a mechanical or intellectual way and drops down into the heart, so one is actually living it, and one is actually in the moment participating in that truth that we say we embrace. That's when we start to be life itself. And so this is all about life. If I could say what is truth for me, maybe the one word that I can understand is that truth is life. Not just living any kind of way we want, but if one understands the manufacture of life, the coming together of things, the properties, the laws, the conditions, then we would have more confidence in our ability to make life meaningful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I speak so forcefully you would want me to wear something, but I can't breathe with the mask. Um, and so all of this is about us realizing that that there is a translation required, and that these are just fingers pointing at something, but we have to actually go where they are, where it's pointing. And if we do that, then life will actually take on life. Your life will take on life, and things will become alive. Will become alive to you. And not only that, you can have you can mix with it, you can integrate with it, and you can create life in the way that in a way that you never thought was possible. We think we're victims of circumstance. We think, like we're just here and something happens and then we respond to it. But that's such a backwards way of understanding, how to live and move and have your being. It's all about turning that around. To turn, that's what repent means. It means to go in a different direction. It doesn't mean, oh, forgive me for my sins. It means to turn and go in a different direction. So all while we are learning the Dharma, all while we're doing these things, but if we're not turning and going in the other direction, then we're not doing anything. And so these books were particularly, I felt that they inspire you to recognize that there's more output than available than what we're tuning into, or we just need to turn that dial up a little bit, and we will find that we are not just here being victims of circumstance, but we are creating our world moment by moment. And I ask you, what is your part in the creation? What are you putting into the mix that is creating the world? So these are experiences shared. The reason why I like pick these three particular books is because the authors were sharing their direct experience. It doesn't mean that we have to embrace everything. I mean, it was their experience. It might be true, it might not be true. That's not the point. The point is having enough courage to look into your own life, and enough heart, and enough aspiration, and enough belief, heart, aspiration, and belief, to know that your life matters and what you can offer to the world matters, and to be able to freely offer it to the world without a thought of self is what allows us to give our highest and to give our best. And I'm telling you, when we're moving in that way, that's when we're moving in the Dharma, not because we can give a scholarly dissertation, or not because we can sit for so long like a bump on a log, and getting up after all of that time with no power at all, just totally powerless to put an active ingredient into the moment. And so I'd like for us to move towards changing this from a philosophy, from a discipline, from an education, from a religion, until we actually become that. The whole thing was around embodying the Dharma, embodying it. And to be able to do that, that takes a certain merging with the truth that activates and truly makes one alive, not just counting the breaths until your last one. So I want to end out this year, this week, with some key points in uh, chapter 9. And you can read the rest of this on your own. And he comes, oh, wrong glasses. I'm sorry, they still work. He's coming from, a particular perspective, and we all have our perspective, that which resonates with us and helps us, if it really helps us. There's no point in resonating with something that doesn't help you, you know. But part of the reason that we do that, stay with things, or just as creatures of habit, is because we identify with the things that we've already taken hold of, or the things that we've already taken up. Even when we're in something that we no longer like, even if we're with someone we no longer want to be with, we start thinking like, then how can I be without them? What would I be if I wasn't this? And that's why it becomes so difficult for us, because we get so aligned or attached to the labels of who and what we are. And so, and we find ourselves unable to grow as we could, because we're stuck in the personal aspect of being in relationship with things and with people. And we talk about interpersonal relationships, and we talk about all of these kinds of things, me, like them, you, touchy feely, all of those things, because we think that that's what we need to give us a sense of connection. But the true connection, the broadest connection, comes in the more impersonal you become. That's when you can become more loving and more kind, because it's not based on any kind of personal requirement. No particular thing required by a particular person, from a particular person. You see, it's that particular that gets us into trouble. And we might not call it particular, we call it personal. Yeah. And so, because we have an idea of what personal is, we have some notion of what we think impersonal is. But when the Buddha is talking about this magnanimous spirit, this broad-based, this boundless compassion, we mean impersonal in that sense. So that the one who is far from you is as dear as the one who is near to you. Who works on that every day? Who? Let me see a hand. Okay. And when I say works on it, I mean honestly works on it. Where one is diminishing their attachment to the one who is dear, and strengthening just by pure virtue of the fact that that one is alive, seeing them as yourself. I saw a few hands go up, but I don't think you're grasping it in the sense that I'm talking about it. Because if so, this room would be cooking. It would be heating with our passion for the world. I was reading this morning, and I sent sister a text, and I said, we talk about how tired we are, and how done we are, and how through we are with this and with that, but we're hardly doing anything but taking care of ourselves. I mean, just to thine own self be true. So I don't mind looking at myself in that way, because I know my deficiencies. I don't mind looking at myself in that way, because I'm trying to cast off my deficiencies. I don't mind looking at myself in that way.
because I want my life to count for something, giving as much time as I give to it. It's a shame to give all that time and at the end you just still die and haven't done anything. So we look for things to say, do nothing. And we think, oh, do nothing. Oh, I'm practicing doing nothing. But he's talking about the nothing that comes from one not having any thought about themselves doing. That's how nothing goes undone. What does this mean? What does this mean to you? I know this Dharma is not for everybody. Some people that are tuning in may not tune in again. This might be too strong. It might be too hard. But do we have to stay in the first grade forever? There are some who would do more. There are some who would go further, who would come closer to attaining the truth if we could take a strong dose of medicine. But because we make everything, I think somebody said that they give a newspaper, and this was like maybe a decade or maybe 2 decades ago. So it's a 8th grade education. Maybe it's 3rd grade now, I don't know. But in that, we'll all stay at 8th grade. Some of us want to graduate. I know I do. And so it's going to take more than just what's for the ordinary run-of-the-mill. Don't worry, I'll trickle back around to kindergarten at some point. You know. But we have to keep going. Some want to go further than that. And so these books are designed to, depending on what your propensity is, there is a Dharma gate for you. And if you will step through that Dharma gate and inquire and allow it to teach you, then your life will be fulfilling and this path will unveil itself to you. An accomplishment for you alone is also possible. So on page 170, sorry, I think it's 148. I want to try to unpack a few things that said. Now, if you started in this book study near the middle of the book or anywhere past chapter 3, then what you read is not going to come out, you're not going to come away with the understanding that's intended, because the setup is in chapters 1, 2, and 3. It means that something you will read will be easily misinterpreted or misunderstood because the foundation has not been laid for this inquiry. So I suggest that you go back to the beginning of the book and start over. As a matter of fact, I suggest that you go back to the beginning of the book and start over. Matter of fact, you might have to go back to the beginning of the book and read chapters 1 through 6, maybe 3 or 4 times to get the foundation. Because when you get up to this end of it, this is going to be hard to understand, or you'll begin to have some aversion to some of what you're reading because it's not in the particular spiritual pathway that you are walking on at this time. And it'll be hard to make the translation or to read between the lines and pick out what the way of looking at that for you. But I'm going to try anyway to connect some of these dots. On page 147, it says, in reality, he said to the abbot, there is only the present. There is no past, and there is no future. So he said that if you free yourself from false virtues, you will be enlightened. And this requires a discernment now of your thoughts, your motives, your reactions, what is being said to you now. And when you think about it, whenever you're contemplating something, whether it's true or whether it's false, whether it's good or whether it's bad, how are you evaluating that? It's are you looking into are you putting it up against what you've already been taught of what is good or what is virtuous? I love the Tao Te Ching in there. It says that when the is lost, then we have morality. When morality is lost, then, so it starts with this duh. And if we can think of it as universal goodness, in the past I translated it as virtue, but virtue ties so closely with morality. Let's just step away from virtue. But it is the unfolding of the universe in all of its goodness and all of its creativity, and that's a law unto itself. And we, being a product of, or an outpicturing of that law. And he says that when that is lost, the natural goodness, then we come to concepts like virtue and morality, because we've lost the ideal. But when virtue and morality is lost, then you have to have regulation. You have to have laws, and you have to have rules. So therefore, the lawless, therefore ones who do not have the virtue, and the ones who have virtue that has to be spoken have lost the internal basic goodness. And so that's why prison of life, Buddhadasa. That's why Buddhadasa said even virtue is a prison. Now that's not for the neophyte that you say virtue is a prison. It's for the one who is now enamored with their virtue. That you say your virtue is a prison. Anything that we can grasp onto becomes a prison for us. Any way that we can separate ourselves from others becomes a prison for us. So I'm talking about getting free now, free from even the things that we have clung to, trying to get free. And that now will not be so useful to us because we have learned their lesson. It's like taking a lemon or orange and squeezing all of the sweet nectar out of it, and then we're finished just walking around with the orange peel, instead of imbibing the nectar. Isn't it time we're at this place? We've been squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. Can we set down the peel and imbibe the nectar? This is another whole level of living life. It's another whole way of being in the world that is useful for you as you become useful for those around you. I started to say others, but it's getting to the erasure of others. All I hear all the time, I got to do this for myself. I got to do that for myself. At the end of the road, it's still all about myself. I'm just saying. I'm just talking now. Because we're coming up on the end of this study. We can study till the cows come home. And walk away thinking we've learned something. Or that we are something. And so he talks about there only being the present, no past and no future. And every time that we evaluate something, we're evaluating it according to something in the past. And he went on to explain, to understand that which is limitless, unconditioned, your mind must not be burdened by thoughts of the self. The self, which is nothing, must dissolve away so that reality can express itself in the now. Life is real. It is complete in itself. It's expressing itself freely when you yourself become nothing. You yourself diminish. So if anybody asked me who was the devil, I would say it is the egoic self is the devil. When the Buddha was there working and dealing with himself, and Mara came, who is Mara? But the thoughts that came to him about his previous life and the things that he liked at some point in time in his life. The dancing girls, the beautiful women, all of the treasures and the gains and the fame and the accolades of life. So that was Mara. But that was nothing more than his remembrance of who he was in this worldly sense. And it came back around to get him again and again and again. Now, he was just 29 at this time. 29-year-old, I'm saying. Don't waste a precious human life. We should be getting on with it. And this is not a fussing. This is an encouragement for some, not for all. Some have just reached, I think, what's if a bhikkhu should wish? What suit is that? Some of us, it's a great sutra to read, if a bhikkhu should wish. Because he talks about, well, if you wish, if you have in your heart's desire is this, do these things. If your heart's desire is this, do these things. If your heart's desire is this, do these things. So if you're satisfied with your life, then I'm not talking to you. But some of us have a glimpse of something more. But we have to drop off more of the self to realize it, to actualize it. That's what I mean. I don't mean to really realize in the sense of seeing it, but to realize it in the sense of stepping into it. That's what I mean. Maybe I'm talking this way because I'm 70 and I'm coming up on the end of my life. It's not going to be tomorrow, I hope. But because I recognize the shortness of the time. The time is fleeting. Just yesterday, it was 10 years ago for me. Just last week, it was 20 years ago for me. I was going through some photographs last night, and I was saying, oh, sweet bird of youth, how'd you fly so fast? Seems like just yesterday, somebody gave me my first book on the Dharma. I'm still reading it. The first book. I haven't even mastered the first book. Everybody knows what that is. That's my favorite, the Majjhima Nikaya. Because when you master that book, you mastered the whole thing. But still, I can go right to the first sutta I read. And I can be wow and amazed by it. because I haven't entered into the fullness of it yet. As the Buddha kept saying, oh, I think there must be more. I think there must be more. But he didn't just think there must be more. He applied himself to discover what more there was. Life is real. It is complete in itself. So the only competition life has is the egoic self. That's the only competition. We're not in a competition with any other. Only between reality and our fabrication of reality. He said, and when one gets this, then we'll no longer be agitated by the worshiping of virtues. We become virtue itself. No longer looking outside at something. And then one can know in the moment what is the right action to take in this situation concerning this individual at this particular time. The confusion will fall away. And there's a kind of confidence that will emerge that has nothing whatsoever to do with you or me as a person. And one becomes easily able to just be fluid, just fluidly moving. Don't have to have an explanation. Don't have to have, just, sister, can you help with this? Sure I can. Simple as that. Just cruising, I'm talking about. Just cruising through life, not attached to anything. So sharp to turn on a dime. That kind of flexibility. Then one is truly living in the moment. And when we've got our stuff all planned out, what we're going to do, and any change is an aggravation and an agitation. Can't catch the fire of the moment. Then we're bound, and we're not in the now. The now is comprised of so many things, so many factors coming together to produce the present moment. However, could you plan out now? Impossible to do. And so we have a lot of frustration because we're trying to plan it all out. One has to be at this place before they can master the 8 worldly winds. Because until you get to this moment, there will be a sense of praise or blame. Until you get to this moment, there will be a sense of loss or gain. Your identity will be all tied up in it. This is what creates pleasure and pain. The selfing in the moment. This is what gives you a personal sense of loss or gain. You never be free until you're free of those 8 things. Then you can step out with all you have, all your heart, all your might, all your strength, with anything you step forward to accomplish. And whether it turns out good or doesn't, you know that you gave your all. And at the same time, you won't even be attached to it. It's kind of like a helium balloon, filling a balloon with helium. Up and away. Feeling it, filling it, and letting it go. That's the freedom. If we press through, that this path will offer. That's the path. So we're not attaching decals to the self. Excels in mindfulness. Excels in concentration. Looks good in a robe. We're not attaching decals to the self, but rubbing out. And we won't make gods out of everything. We'll just live something authentically or not. Whether anybody knows it or not. And we'll be getting closer to the kind of freedom that the Buddha walked in. Says that when we acquire our faith through understanding, not through fear, then we become useful. Now I'm on page 180. By seeing the impersonal, we move beyond the personal. And we will rid our minds of all disturbing elements. And he says, by doing this, what he called the divine power acts without hindrance. What is that hindrance? Self is the hindrance. And we can transform all things by the power of love and wisdom. Remember that every disturbing influence is like a gorilla hiding in the corner of the mind, waiting for its comrades to arrive. And when they gather in sufficient numbers, they launch an attack on the unsuspecting individual and lay him low. The cure is understanding. The world is sick because we, the individuals, are sick. We are the world. Confusion and ignorance are the cause. Remove these two impostors and the divine man will appear in all his glory. And he goes on in chapter 10, and he keeps just talking about the now. Reality is not something afar off, it's here and now. And when this is realized, then will come peace, not as the world gives its peace, but the peace that is eternal and ever present. The Buddha was talking about how when he would sit and meditate that he felt a kind of pleasure, and at first it bothered him. Then he thought, why should I be concerned about the pleasure that's not born of this world? And then he said, then I was no longer concerned about the pleasure that's not born of this world. But one cannot approach that pleasure as long as they think that there is some pleasure in this world that's greater than that pleasure. And the only way one can know for oneself is to taste. But you can't just come along to any stand and grab a glass of this. It's like one who sees a precious field, Field, and sells everything they have to buy it. In our own mind, we think it costs us something. But even so, we'll dole out for it. We'll sacrifice this thing and that thing to be able to buy it. And then we know we have a field of great price. It has meaning for us. Life can have purpose, but only the purpose that we give it. Life can be full of joy, but only in the places where we don't grasp. The greatest gift that we can give is ourselves. So as we are approaching the end of this year, we can see the degree to which people are imprisoned by their fixation upon themselves. And we can see the condition of the world when it's every man for himself and for his clan. We can see ourselves ripping at the very fabric of humanity. And we look for answers outside of ourselves. as we're going into our 4-night retreat in a couple of weeks, what will you be doing during that time? Sleeping? What will you be? What are you committing to? What is the purpose? What is the aspiration? What is the great wish? I got an email from Rob, and he was talking about his intention in going in, and it was so wonderful. He was talking about laying an axe to the root of something that he's been struggling with, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Said, I'm done with that once and for all. That's all I'm taking in to my sit. No more with the back and forth. Making a decision. No one can do that for you. You have to do it for yourself. But if these writers have encouraged you in any kind of way this year, that there is something to be gained in this practice that eyes haven't seen, ears haven't heard, neither has it even entered into your heart. The things that one can enter into that take us from a realm of insufficiency and deficiency to sufficiency. If their stories have inspired you in any kind of way, to look and see what's present right there in your life. If you couldn't find yourself in any of the pages, don't give up hope. If you could find yourself on some of the pages, have more hope. If you were inspired, know that it just didn't go for these 3 practitioners, but it's available for all. And I'd like for us to close out by just sitting and contemplating. I plan to talk about the vidyas today, the 5 brightnesses. But I'm going to save that. Do we have a week? It's Tuesday? Mm-hmm. What's the date? Before the 6th. Do we have 2 weeks? Okay, so we have 1 more week. So I'll talk about that next week because I like to send out. Are they on mailing list here for this Tuesday? Oh no. No, for just Tuesdays. Tuesdays has a mailing list. Okay, great. Then I will send the information to you before Tuesday so that you can have a chance to look it over. So we're going to be talking about the 5 vidyas, the 5 brightnesses.
a foundation for that. I'm sorry, you see me doing strange things because I see people walking around outside. It's okay. I think maybe that's Vi and her daughter. And I saw, the trash can lid to the dumpster, and people ride around and look for dumpsters to put their trash in, and that just goes with having one, right? It's like I learned that when you have a business, you expect people you expect your pens and your Xerox paper to disappear. And if you don't expect, if you can't deal with that, don't have a business. So we don't have to be upset and fight over everything. Yeah. We can just take some things in stride as the cost of doing business. That's a good way to think about living this life. We have to accommodate certain things that in the past brought us anxiety, brought us fear, brought us anger, But to walk this path, we have to discount over that up as the cost of doing business. And then you'll find a happiness that the world didn't give you. So the world can't take it away. And as we're sitting, coming to the close of these 3 book studies this year, I've been grateful for your presence. And for the people who really applied their hearts to understanding the principles. And for those who've been pondering them but couldn't quite put them into action yet, that's all right, keep pondering. And for those that put them into action without any fruit yet, and to those that put them into action and have inherited fruit, I thank you for investing in yourself. And for believing that freedom from suffering is possible. And for encouraging others to do the beneficial thing. That's a true friend. And for those who held one who was floundering and faltering. And to the one who stumbled and fell and got up and went again. And to the one who stumbled and fell, who's still laying down, not quite able to get up yet. For everyone who invested in themselves. And I thank you. And for everyone who did the hard things that they didn't want to do, who took bitter medicine, the bitter pill. By the time not recently, it's not like a long time ago, recently,
I went to the doctor, and I was talking about my complaint. He said, yeah, well, it's obvious you're not taking the medicine I gave you. Because if you were, you wouldn't still be having that complaint. And so I admitted that that was true. But I didn't have to admit it. The proof was in the pudding. I've seen your progress and your growth over this year in ways that, because you become responsible for yourself, that it has nurtured and invigorated me. All of you as my teacher. Now you've supported each other. Now you've encouraged each other. And how, when you felt you weren't getting support, you bounced back. Anyway, all of these things, this is our life. And it is what we make it in the final analysis. This has been a tough year for COVID. I was reading about the parents talking about, well, you know, here in Hendersonville, they closing the schools. They said the incidence of outbreak is 3 times greater just in the past few weeks. So they're closing the schools, and right away the parents came to fight against closing the schools. You know, and we know the reason for that is because they need to go to work, and the school babysits. And they were talking about something that's very real. They were talking about the fact that the children are not doing well with online learning, the young children. You know, but here's the thing. Even if they lost 1 year to not lose their lives, they can work on making it up next year. We're so privileged. Ask anybody whose child stayed back. They had another year to make it up. So maybe we have to extend, you know, they're doing something like pass fail, you know, but you can't like just pass fail. If we have to reset and repeat this year, we have to reset and repeat this year when schools are open. But we get so stuck in a model, in a mode, that we can't see our way out of anything. What is it? We got to keep on schedule? We have simple solutions to problems, but we have to get out of the self to see them. So look at your problems as you're coming to the end of this year. Write them down. We don't have as many problems as we think we have. Make a decision this year, this coming year, that we're going to stop creating so many problems for ourselves. And we're going to live this year well. As somebody said, when they go low, we'll go high. It sounds simple. It sounds But really, it is as simple as that. We're going high this year because we know we can. When gravity is pulling us down, we just step into a higher law and soar like an eagle. I'm going there. I hope some go with me.